Unspoken Issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. We are the one-stop shop for 90s comics discussion. That's right. I said it. Write it down, put it on a deposit slip, and send it to the bank. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a two-parter that happened in some annuals from DC in 1994. These annuals, you guys might remember these Elseworlds annuals that occurred back around in 1994. This one is the Super 7. And with Elseworlds, you know, we got the potential for some crazy stuff happening in these issues. So I want to step back, though, here real quick, bring on the guests. Dean Compton, of course, Unspoken Decade is here. Super 7, we're talking Elseworlds, we're talking 90s comics. This is DC. I'm loving it. I love me some What If. I love me some Elseworlds. Tell me all about what you're thinking here as before we get into this story.
Yeah, you know, I'm a big mark for Elseworlds and What Ifs as well. You know, this story just always resonated with me. I probably read it 35, 40 times. I had both parts when I was a kid. Read them to the point the covers came off, and then I just pinned the covers on the wall, you know, so that, like, you know, I could be reminded of it all the time. I mean, it's one of my, there's nothing, like, honestly innovative about it. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just very straightforward and very good. Everything is executed incredibly. It touches on every note. If you're a DC fan, it's really cool to see the interpretation of these characters. If you're not, it really doesn't matter. They give you everything you need to know right off. And yeah, the 1994 Elseworld, 1994 DC annuals, they were all Elseworlds. I don't think there were many other two-parters, if any other two-parters within those, but they really hit the gamut here that year, which, you know, all those annuals, they gave you so much from, like, you know, this great story of alien oppression and the indomitable human spirit to samurai Batman and pirate Batman. So you got all that. And then John Burns, what if Superman came here during, like, you know, he's on the British side during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, it's during the Revolution. Yep.
So you got all of this stuff that this year. So I think it was a great idea. I think this was well done on every level. You know, I hadn't read it in like a year, and if I haven't read it in a while, it always brings me to tears. It did when I was young. It still does. And I'm really excited to talk more about it. I will say before we get started, though, it's funny that it's called the Super 7, because Super 7 now is like a toy company, and they make a bunch of cool shit. They should,
really?
They should sponsor us. Yeah. They make the reaction figure.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that. I know the reaction figures for sure. I've seen plenty of those shared throughout my timeline and stuff that I was looking at. Really cool looking. You know, they're basic little tiny figures, but they look
awesome. Star Wars figures, you know,
right,
for the most part from the 80s. You know, 5 points of articulation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny that, you know, that, like, now when you say Super 7 has an entirely different connotation.
Well, Darry, you're here, buddy. You said, are we doing the Super 7 story? Oh, man, am I so down? So, yeah, you know, tell me a little bit about it. You ready to talk some Super 7 tonight?
I am absolutely ready to talk about Super 7. I love this story, full stop. I cannot recommend this story enough. I think it is one of the best stories DC did during the 90s. It uses the Elseworlds format to its fullest potential. It says all you need to know about these characters are their names and what you brought to the table. Don't worry about the details. We're going to tell you a great story. I wish this were perpetually in print like Watchmen. I wish I could just hand it to people because I love it. It makes great use of limited space. I mean, these are just two annuals, but you get not only a complete story for all the characters, but you get some phenomenal character moments, which shouldn't be a surprise because this was written by Carl Kiesel, who did some of my favorite comics from the 90s, especially from DC. And then the other thing, which I mentioned to you guys before we started recording, but obviously the Super 7 comes from the Seven Samurai, which is a famous Japanese movie from the 1950s. It also happens to be one of my favorite movies of all time. So I went into this thinking, well, there's no way it's going to be, you know, as good as this cinematic classic. And while it's not, it is still incredible. And it's very much inspired by the narrative of that movie. And there are a couple of scenes that Kiesel seems to take directly from the movie to great effect. It's more than an homage. It uses the narrative and the story and that idea of almost class warfare to tell a great adventure story. So yeah, I cannot recommend these two issues enough.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie. When you mentioned it, though, I was wondering if you would give me a description of what it was like, and that's perfect. I'm glad you did.
I'd never seen it either. I had no idea this was based on anything. I just thought it was a way for Kiesel to showcase Superboy, which I believe he co-created Superboy and wrote Superboy Forever, and then later Superboy and the Ravers. So I just thought this was a way for him to, showcase that character, which he does a great job of, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but but that's what I thought it was. Hey, here's a great story, great way to get him over, great in an avenue where things can happen that can't happen in a straight DCU comic.
Again, I'm really happy that you guys enjoyed this and hadn't seen the movie, because that means that I'm not a crazy person. Well, I may be a crazy person, but not for this in particular.
Yeah, I was going to say you are, but this isn't why.
One of the reasons that the movie is still so well regarded so many years later is because people have seen it and they've taken things from it, and a lot of times they've taken the wrong things from it, but it still ends up working. What I mean by that is, the movie focuses on 7 down on their luck, basically warriors, and they have to come together for one great battle. But the whole point of the movie is showing you why these people are willing to come together, how proud they are, how much had to go wrong for them to be in that in the first place, and how much of their situation is derived both from the people who've asked for protection and for the people who are attacking them. It's very much a social commentary. That's why I think it was so successful in Japan. And then when it got out of Japan, it was like, hey, do you guys want to see samurai kill bandits in the rain with swords for 3 hours? You do? Well, then please show up and watch this black and white movie. And then, of course, there were a lot of remakes and, any story, really, including the Justice League that has 7 characters in it, probably features some version of someone going and assembling the band for the first time, getting all the characters together, seeing how the relationships interplay, and seeing how everything balances out. So again, it's foundational. And the way I discovered it is it was written and directed and basically made by Akira Kurosawa, who also made The Hidden Fortress, who made a bunch of other movies, all of which went into inspiring Star Wars. So I am not a cinemaphile. I'm a big Star Wars fan. And then I found this stuff and I love it. So if you liked any of this stuff, if you've ever liked Star Wars and you've never heard of Akira Kurosawa, go watch this movie. It's 3 hours well spent.
If you've tuned into this program and do not know what an Elseworlds comic is, Elseworlds. In Elseworlds, heroes are taken from their usual settings and put into strange times and places. Some that have existed or might have existed, and others that can't, couldn't, or shouldn't exist. This is one of them. All right, there it is.
Yeah, so that's the thing too. Elseworlds, it's funny because it starts with Gotham by Gaslight. Retroactively, at the time they didn't have this brand, but later they would do it. They would retroactively say that was the first one. It was really hot. There's a lot of stuff. Batman, Red Rain, the computer generated Digital Justice, Robin 3000, they a lot of the first few were Batman, were just straight up Batman. When they did the whole annuals thing, people thought that they were overexposing it to the point where I can't remember what issue it is. I think it's back issue, the magazine that Tomorrow's puts out, number 107 or 108. And they focused on what ifs and Earth X and Elseworlds. And this guy was like, these annuals were a waste of time and overexposed the brand. They didn't do anything good. But I defy you to 2 things. Number 1, read these 2 issues and tell me that this somehow overexposed it wasn't good. Number 2, I don't even know what you're talking about, to be honest. You're trying to sell comic books and this will sell comic books. He talks to it, he's like, it used to mean something. Bro, it was Batman fighting Jack the Ripper. It didn't mean, it was a good story, but it wasn't these were the pinnacles or the foundations of what DC was built on. It was goddamn, what if Bruce Wayne got the Green Lantern ring? That's it. So I don't know. It's weird how I don't feel like What If is treated that way, but it's weird. He is not the only person that I've heard this sentiment from that Elseworlds shouldn't be overexposed. Really? Wow. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a Marvel guy. Maybe it's something that DC people are more concerned with. I don't know. I'd read 100 fucking Punisher titles a month as long as they were good.
This isn't a concept that just went away and was overexposed and nobody liked it. This is something that people loved and are still applying today and making great stories You know, we had a What If Disney Plus series. I'd love to understand why in the world this guy thought it was overexposed for some reason at that point.
I think it's important to understand two things. You know, one, Elseworlds is just a post-Christ version of what used to be called an imaginary story, right? Yeah. You know, pre-crisis.
Or even just the Infinite Earths themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. DC used to do this incredibly well. You know, if they had a really good story and they didn't want to bother, again, not that they had a lot of ongoing stories for the longest period of time. I mean, you know, the Trinity was able to stay in print because every month, for the most part, things got reset back to normal, which is fine. That's what the market wanted back then. But once they started really getting into it, you know, they had no problem telling imaginary stories. And those were really, really good because you could, just like in Elseworld, you could say, well, listen, this month, do whatever you want. And at the end of the story, it's going to turn out Jimmy Olsen's waking from a dream, and he might tell someone, he might not. And then the other thing is that I think for the Elseworlds, so many of them in the early 90s were so good. You know, they were really, really good. There was a high quality of stuff. I know I came to it in 1996 via Kingdom Come, and that's still one of my favorite comics of all time. And it having the Elseworlds brand on it, I feel like people our age got very protective of that brand. And it's saying, listen, if you're not going to hit the highs of Mignola drawn Batman and Alex Ross drawn Superman and Captain
The Golden Age with James Robinson and Paul Smith.
Oh, the best Justice
Howard Chaykin's Secret Society of Superheroes in 2000, which is, I think, the most overlooked Elseworlds of them all. Like it is great, and just people don't get there for some reason.
Yeah, there was a great one later on. I don't even know if it carried the Elseworlds title, but JLA Destiny by John Arcudi, which I love. I don't know why, but I love it. But yeah, I think part of the problem is it was a victim of its own success. There's so many of those early Elseworlds. I mean, if you're starting off with Mignola drawing steampunk Batman, you really can only go downhill. So, you know, when you get to the point where Elseworlds maybe is being thrown on books that, you know, like a What If, it's like, well, we're just trying this out. We're not saying it's still going to be in print in 20 years. We're trying it out. People are like, oh, that shouldn't have been an Elseworlds. That should have been something else. As opposed to across the street where, you know, when I was reading month-to-month comics, there was always What If. Some were good, some were bad. Most were just there. You know, there wasn't necessarily a mark of quality. It just meant, you know, weird stuff's going to happen and the toys aren't going to be put back in the box at the end.
Right.
And to your point, Jesse, too, I mean, look at this. Like now, you have the Flash movie that's coming out. You have the Flash TV show. You will have cartoons that have the Flash in them, and everybody can tell the difference. And, like, it's wild to think that once upon a time, like this guy said it was overexposed. That's why, sort of why DC did the Crisis. They thought people were too stupid to know that, like, there were alternate realities. And now, like, things are, like, tripled down. There's got to be, like, 6 versions of Spider-Man right now.
Right,
that, like, you could go look at any time, counting the comic book, you know. And, you know, I mean, I think, yeah, it's wild to think this stuff would ever be overexposed, especially too with what Darry said. Half of the classic Silver Age Superman stories are imaginary. You know, arguably the greatest Superman story of the 1980s, Alan Moore's, you know, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, is an imaginary story right off the top. So yeah, I don't understand that guy's point of view either, but you know, but I do want to say, after bagging on that guy a lot, Michael Urey does a great job. Back Issue is a great magazine. I don't want to come across like I'm bagging on the magazine. I get it every time it comes out, 8 times a year. You should subscribe. Like, that's a free plug. He didn't pay me anything to do it. He's been very nice to me, though.
Well, hey, these 2 issues, it looks like it's really close to 120 pages. Great story. Let's talk about the first one here. So here we go. Like you said, written by Carl Kiesel, penciled by Brock L. Rohr, Kurt A. Schultz on inks, Glenn Whitmore colors, Albert de Guzman on letters. And this first issue happened, this is Adventures of Superman Annual number 6. Title of the story, Part 1, The Longest Night. The Horde has arrived. Their goal is that of dominating the universe, and now they look to conquer the Earth. Terrorizing the world, they decree that civilians will lose their lives if any metahumans join in any resistance. Valiant battles were fought and scores of human lives were lost. And as the casualties mount, humanity begins to betray their superheroes in order to fall in line with the Horde and save their own lives. Many heroes begin to leave the Earth as there seems to be nothing left to protect. One last gasp to turn the tide of war was headed by Lex Luthor. However, it was stifled as Lex and his team were killed. That was 9 years ago. Now all hope appears to be lost, save a small uprising being cobbled together by Jimmy Olsen, who happens to be conspiring with Counselor Lana Lang.
Jimmy Nick Fury Olsen. He has an eye patch now.
He does have an eye patch. He is conspiring with Counselor Lana Lang, a human liaison trusted by the Horde. Lana tells Jimmy she knows where Superman is, which could be a key factor in defeating the Horde, obviously. Believing Lois Lane to have been killed in a Horde-led attack, Clark Kent has been working as a slave, much like the rest of humanity, bereft of hope. Jimmy finds him with news that Lois may not actually be dead. Reinvigorated Superman escapes the Horde compound with Jimmy, and the two regroup looking to find other heroes that may help their cause. Wonder Woman soon shows up, and the trio goes to find Batman in Texas, of all places.
I assume, much like Coast City, a lot of the cities, Gotham City, Metropolis, have been destroyed. In fact, we see a lot of stuff in Metropolis. It's pretty much gone.
They also stop by what used to be Coast City to talk to Green Lantern and run into a young, powerful resistance fighter that has taken the name of Superboy. The team believes Superboy to be too brash, posing more of a danger than a help, so the team refuses to allow him to join in on the fight. Their next stop is to find Wally West, who lost his leg in an attack by a mob of angry people and remains traumatized. However, his spirit is not yet completely broken, and he also agrees to join them. The heroes show up at a Horde facility that has been demolished. The cause? Superboy. They all agree Superboy can join them, but mainly so they can keep an eye on him. Now the team head to a resistance base in Metropolis to rally the fighters there, where they are greeted by a new hero, in quotes, who wishes to join them. Metal X, the kryptonite-powered body of Metallo with Lex Luthor's undamaged brain controlling it. The Super 7 now aims to take the fight to the Horde. There you go. That is our synopsis of part 1 of this 2-part series.
Every page is great, and the 5 or 6 people that are still working at DC should crack this one open and read it, because if Discovery's going to sell you guys off for parts, at least go out fighting.
Did you guys hear those noises? Shots fired.
I feel very bad for DC because while I am a Marvel zombie in every definition of that word, most of what I would consider my Desert Island comics came from Vertigo or DC in the 90s. So I mourn, but things are going to get rough over there. Anyway, this comic is great. And from the beginning of the issue, I wanted to mention real quick the art. So we were talking about this before we started, but I love the art in this issue, and I don't recognize this artist's name from anything else. And what little research I was able to muster didn't point me in the direction of any other comic. So if anyone is reading this and knows what else Brock Orr has done, please let me know, because I really enjoyed this. The art felt very John McCrea-ish, the artist of Hitman and a variety of other comics from this period of time, which is one of the highest compliments I can give a person. So I just kind of knocked it out of the park. The opening spread of Superman and what remains of the Justice League fighting the Horde was great. To Dean's point earlier, this is one of those things where I just would have hung up on the wall. I don't even care if I was tearing it out of a comic. This issue is great because it does the number one thing that an Elseworlds story can do. It shows you how Superman loses, right? You know Superman's going to come back eventually and do what he can to protect everyone. That is what he does. That is what defines him more than anything else. But Elseworlds says, okay, yeah, but what if he has a bad day, a real bad day? And how do you hurt Superman? You hurt the people around him. You hurt the people who have been entrusted to him because they are vulnerable. And the Horde have a very great gimmick. We don't spend a lot of time, and this is something that was taken from the film as well, you don't spend a lot of time with the villains. Not that they're not interesting, not that they're not dangerous, but they're not the point. They're not the antagonists here. The antagonists are the misery that's been inflicted and the conflict between the heroes and the people who are scared, but they want to protect them nonetheless. And the Horde's great gimmick is just, we outnumber you. There are 1 million alien ships to every person you have that can punch an alien ship. And if you guys don't back down, we're going to kill civilians because we don't care. We're not here for civilians. We're going to kill as many of them as it takes. One of our previous episodes was Mars Attacks, and it was a very similar gimmick where it was, well, we have a very big fleet of starships, and we're here and we want as many resources as possible, but we have to take out the superhumans first. This has a very similar premise, except they go a step further and says we're going to wipe out as many people as we can every single time we see someone with a cape or who can fly or can shoot energy beams, whatever whatever it is. And obviously, if this were an in-continuity crossover, you'd find a way around that. But here, it's a great gimmick. You have to skip ahead a couple of decades, and you get this beautiful premise of the humans are afraid of the superhumans, because every time they show up, 10,000 people die. And I just one of those great gimmicks that I think you could tell 100 stories about.
Watching the heroes leave, because you're just like, what's left? We are here to protect these people. They don't want our protection anymore. They do not want us here. And it'd probably be better if we just left anyway, because that is the only way we can protect them and make sure that they live, is so we aren't around.
Well, also, I mean, there's a certain amount of self-preservation involved. One of the things you see is like, the people crucify Green Arrow. A government sends, attack helicopters after Hawkman and Hawkwoman and blow them away. Not that these heroes, are like, oh, well, there's going to be trouble. I guess I won't deal with it. But like, okay, so there's a bunch of people who don't want me around. They're going to be terrible. Like they cripple Wally West.
Right.
But also, now the government's going to also try and kill me. I'm going to go figure out where, something else that I can do where I can help more surreptitiously or just go somewhere else for a little bit. Right. Although I got to say, I don't know where he went, but I wish Captain Marvel would have showed back up. He's holding his own. You don't see what happens to him. I bet that he's one of the metas that, would show up later in this continuity.
I'm not saying that I've got a 50-page script for Captain Marvel coming in a sequel that is based on Yojimbo, another Akira Kurosawa movie, but I'm also not saying that I have that in case, again, anyone who works at DC has listened this far.
Both of them.
Listen, Marie Evans works very, very, very hard.
It's true.
I wish she had,
because only, like I said, only like 2 or 4 people work there, so you're gonna be working real hard.
I wish she was given unlimited money. I really do. Anyway. Yeah, I agree. It definitely feels like Captain Marvel is prominent in a bunch of crowd shots in the beginning of this thing. And it definitely feels like there was a story there about Billy hiding in the crowd. He'd have been 10 years older. He'd have been about 17 or something, right as the heroes. There's a sequel somewhere of just like, what is Captain Marvel getting up to now?
I feel like, part of the story would be like he's never stopped being Captain Marvel, but he's just a lot more surreptitious about it. Like, I don't want to get exposed. I don't want this stuff, to happen. But yeah, like you feel like there's something there with him. Poor Green Arrow, though. Like he doesn't, like for this world, he doesn't even have superpowers. Y'all went too far. Crucified with his own arrows. I love Green Arrow. That wasn't right.
Yeah, but you jump ahead and we already did the synopsis, but there is a panel in here that every time I read it, it just gets to me. Superman, for being a character that is 80 years old and an icon in every way you could use that word, doesn't have as many great stories as I wish he did. But here, when Jimmy and Lana come to him and he's like, well, I have to help. And he breaks open and you see that even in the lowest moments of despair, he has kept his costume. Yep. And he says, this is a job for Superman. And you see this person say, you've asked for my help, regardless of all the terrible things that my help has brought to these people that I've dedicated my life to. You're asking for help. I cannot not give it. And he's ready to go. I was standing, I was applauding. I was like, this is what I want from this character. You find a good way to take the most powerful fictional character ever committed to 4-color, and you say, how do we get him to believe once again in the mission? This thing knocks it out of the park. It's such a good moment, and it's so 90s too, because he then puts on a long leather coat. Like, he's not just putting on his old costume. Like, he's changed a little bit. And again, this is 2 years before Kingdom Come, when Alex Ross would redesign into the black S symbol, the gray in his hair, the kind of more standoffish. This is a Superman that gets down in the muck and says, I have to help people. Not doing so is killing me more than anything else. And I wanted to make sure that moment was pointed out because I love it so much.
You mentioned the crucifixion of Green Arrow. All of those panels are really powerful. Like, Blue Beetle, it looks like, has thrown his costume into the trash and is walking away.
Carpal tunnel syndrome, am I right? All right, guys.
But that's what I'm talking about with the art. I mean, if you know who Blue Beetle is and you know who created him, to have an homage to Amazing Spider-Man 50 right in the middle.
Very nice.
Of this annual, it's like you know what you're doing. I mean, was that in the script? Was that artistic license? Neither would surprise me because, again, both of these guys, just Beautiful. High marks.
Wow.
High marks to everyone involved.
Yeah, it looks like the atom just shrinks. He's like, I'm out. He just shrinks to where he's never going to be, involved in the
I assume
real
he
world.
goes and finds another tiny indigenous society like the one he lived with in Sword of the Atom.
All that's left is humanity, but that's not where things are going to end, because Lex gets is it the Blackhawks?
Oh, yeah.
He gets a Black
yeah.
Hawk stealth bomber. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets them involved, and of course, unfortunately, it gets stomped out, and he is presumed dead.
Yeah. I mean, and you look at that lineup, Slade Wilson, first off, they're like, oh, they didn't have superpowers. That's Deathstroke. He totally has superpowers. But then, you also had, Selena Kyle, Catwoman, Dick Grayson, Nightwing, Jim Harper, the Guardian. Yeah. There are a few other people that I wish they would have had, like Tim Drake, who could have been, like Robin, or Agent Liberty, Gangbuster. Gangbuster would have been one. And what about the guy from Madison Square Garden in the Carnage comics? He had a big knife. He could have come right out of there, gun out there, stab. He's always ready to go.
I was ready for that, because if you open the second issue, there is graffiti in the background for Pantera, Metallica, and Megadeth. I was just waiting for the second issue. I was all ready to be the person to mention him this episode.
Nice.
Knocked it out of the park. Oh man!
Nice.
I was ready. I saw
that. He was there. He's keeping it alive, baby. He's spray paint. He's stabbing guys. I guess it's better that he wasn't on the Black Hawk, because he was able to continue to, fight the war and keep Megadeth alive. So way to go.
You should keep Megadeth alive. That Black Hawk scene is great, because every time I read that, I think, why don't I have that book? There are 100 terrible comics featuring Slade Wilson, the Terminator, and not one where he is leading the Blackhawks, whose origins are, we are a private air force that bombs countries that have been conquered by fascists. That should be on the stands every single week from now until the sun burns out. And if you want to make Slade Wilson the head of the air group, I don't know what you call a bunch of fighters, I would buy that. Why is that not being published? That's brilliant. That's so good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree, and I think that looked good. And honestly, it's one of those things where you get why they're killed, but you would have liked to have seen more of them later. But it's not going to work if they're around. This is the big moment where everybody's like, "Oh, we can never do anything." The Superman moment you talked about too, where he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't help you. This is a job for Superman." That is usually the first moment when when I was rereading these, that's the first moment here where I tear up. The next one in the first issue is when they go to see Wally West. And Wally West is just he's got metal legs, and he's like, I'm not fast anymore. And and they're like, I'm sorry, we won't ask you to do this. And then all of a sudden he busts out the ring, and you full page. He's like, I've never ran away from a fight in my life. And I'm starting to tear up now, honestly, because this guy really has nothing to offer, very little. I mean, I know he still has fast hands, but he doesn't think he can run anymore, and he will. He'll run one last time. And it's just so beautiful. That moment, it's funny because even the first time I read it, you knew he's going to die at that moment. It's not going to work out. It's not going to work out for him, but it's going to work out for everybody because it's something he's going to manage to do. And that's just that's such a powerful scene for me. This comic means a lot to me too, because, I got it in 1994. Man, that wasn't a good year. It's about a year after my dad had killed himself, which was always, difficult. And I was about to start high school, which was difficult. My parents, my mom and my stepdad, went fucking nuts one day on crystal meth and tried to beat me up. And I ran away, and I stayed with a guy for 2 weeks, my friend for 2 weeks. Then they sent the cops after me. They somehow got the cops to believe everything, that I was somehow terrible and that they were great. And so, I was just terrible. But you would read something like this, and you knew there was hope. You knew that as long as you were Jimmy Olsen, who honestly is the real legacy of Superman here. He is the real, even more so than Superboy, to be honest. Because, no matter what, this is a never-ending battle, and he never stopped fighting. And I would read this comic in those moments, And I would be like, it's going to work out for me. I'm going to figure out a way. And eventually other people will help me, even if nobody has up until now. And I've been very fortunate. I found those people. And I think by any metric, I have succeeded beyond most people who were dealt the cards that I was dealt. But, and I'm not trying to, bring this into a downer. I'm sure I'll make a joke about Cyberports or something in a minute. We'll get this right back up. I don't think you can overestimate the power that this comic would have for somebody who is downtrodden or oppressed. You read these things and you're like, there is hope. You can make it, but you have to try. And it may cost you. But as long as the battle remains never ending, you will win.
Now, my notes for this for this first issue were just the trauma of all of these characters, because that's what they're trying to come back from. They're trying to deal with this horrible event. People that they knew died. Wally West suffering from horrible injuries from the people he, was swearing to protect. Yeah. They turn on him and destroyed his legs.
That's another thing to point out about trauma is like the human race is actually in these comics are actually portraying the trauma of like an abuse victim. Because what would happen, like growing up, I don't mean to make this heavy again, but you would seek, I had an older sister and a younger sister and a younger brother, and sometimes you would seek to deflect. You would be like, even people who are trying to protect you, like I might be sticking up for my brother, but that wouldn't matter in a few hours if he's in trouble again and could deflect it to me. Like you're so beaten, you just don't want anything else bad to happen to you, even ignoring that something good could happen from it. Because I think part of the trauma of the heroes is that they could have won. They could have won. If everybody would have just stuck by them, it would have happened. And sadly, it arguably cost Green Lantern the most when he lost Coast City.
Right.
And in this, and honestly, this Green Lantern, this Hal Jordan, a much better person than the regular DC universe, right? Coast City gets destroyed here. He's like, I'm going to take care of the bones and make sure everyone gets buried. The regular DC universe better go get massive cosmic power and kill all the other Green Lanterns. Better rewrite reality, motherfucker. So anyhow, but like I feel like it's very interesting, like you're saying, as somebody who is a victim of PTSD and trauma, you're right. Everybody here is displaying different kinds of trauma.
Yeah, Batman feels betrayed. The heroes
as well
left.
He should on some level.
Right. I don't blame him. The other thing
about the heroes is trauma. None of them are wrong. They may not be entirely right, but none of them are wrong.
Darry, tell me what you thought of Metalex. Metalex, buddy.
I've always pronounced it Metalex, but you guys are right. It's probably
Metalex. I just went with Metalex as it's like Metalex.
Right. No, well, that's also his name. I can't imagine that like he would want his name mispronounced.
I wanted to tack onto that Green Lantern because that was something that struck me too, that Hal Jordan loses Coast City here and he loses everyone to the point where he is burying skeletons and he's doing, for lack of a better term, penance, even though he didn't necessarily do anything wrong when the heroes discover him. And it's such a great compare and contrast with Emerald Twilight, when, again, he would unfortunately have a nervous breakdown, react differently to that trauma, and murder all of his friends. But again, here it's this idea of endurance. And to Dean's point, that is incredibly important to defining these characters' arcs, because that's kind of what we know about them on page one. We know that these characters are used to winning, and they do win, and that's kind of what they've been defined by. But when they lose, and they lose so bad, they can come back from that, and that is what separates them from many of their peers, both at this company and others. And you buy it. When you see Hal on his knees, and instead of Parallax, he's become, the not the gravedigger, but the caretaker. The person who's gone out of their way to say, these are still my people, and if I failed to protect them and they turned on me, it doesn't matter. I still have to do what I can. And again, when he brings out the lantern and he gives the oath, and he just, God damn it!
Yeah, buddy.
Great.
Why is this comic from 1994 so much better at this than like DC movies? Like, why? I don't understand it. Like this. Anyway, I thought that was a great scene. And every time I got to read a Jeff Johns comic, I go back to this and I think, you know what? This was done in like 6 pages. It took you 60 issues and it wasn't as powerful. But the other thing I want to talk about before I get to Metalex, because I don't know if I'll have an opportunity to bring it up later. The scene in this issue where Superboy appears as the 7th member, or I guess in this case, the 6th member, is very, very particular. So he sets an alarm off at the Resistance compound, and the compound appears to be abandoned except for the superheroes who have gathered together. And then suddenly all the resistance people who are all human, who are all non-superhuman, they come running out and they're terrified and then they don't know what to do. And they see all these people and they think, oh man, we're going to lose. It's not up to us. And then Superboy comes in and says, I'm the one who sounded the alarm. I'm the one who made you confront this because I know what you're going through and I know what they're going through, but I want to win. And I want to make sure that everyone's up front with what they're afraid of and how bad this is really going to be. That is taken almost verbatim from Seven Samurai. The Superboy character in Seven Samurai is called Kikuchiyo, and he is portrayed by Toshiro Mifune, who is arguably the most famous Japanese movie actor. He was Yojimbo. He was in a variety of other films. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, please just Google him. You're going to have a great day. But anyway, he plays Kikuchiyo, who is the best character in the movie. And he does the same thing. And the whole gimmick in the original movie, I guess spoilers for a movie from the 50s, is that he is never clear on whether or not he actually is a samurai. He has the scrolls, he has the sword, he can fight. But the whole point of being a samurai is that it's a title. It's like being a lord or a lady. Someone, the emperor's,
right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Someone's got to
like swear fealty to like a shogun or something.
It's a
I know
political...
just enough about it to be dangerous.
Listen, I'm not an expert on Japanese history. I know what I know from anime, but it's a political thing is what I'm getting at. So It's something that has to be given to you because you did something right to someone who was important, who had wealth, who had land, who had all the other things that politics is based on. And it's never made clear whether or not this guy is telling the truth. But nonetheless, he's completely dedicated to the cause. So he lives in both worlds. He is a man of two worlds, and it's the same thing here with Superboy. They never really detail in these two issues his origin as we know it in the core DC universe, Cadmus, the cloning, all that other stuff. Right. We just know that he was raised in this environment where the Horde are in control and people are afraid. But as far as anyone else is concerned, he wants to be Superman. So he is also a man of two worlds. And the fact that he is the one to do that, and the fact that Kiesel adapted that scene, I love this comic. I'm sorry. I really do. But Metal X, I thought was great because even if it is Australian, chin-strapped, clone ginger Lex Luthor of the early 90s, no one's favorite version of a great character, he is on fire here because I love the idea that an alien armada, and again it's not one race, they're called the Horde because they are multiple races, whatever they feel like drawing in the different scenes, are able to take Lex out, and Lex says, no, I had a backup plan for this. And then he dumps his mind, the greatest mind in the DC universe, other than possibly Dr. Sivana, into a robot powered by kryptonite, just so he can come back and make Superman have to fight alongside of him. It's brilliant. And it's just one of those things that I would read every week going forward because, again, it's the classic Luthor Brainiac team up. It's something you've seen before, but it's done in a completely new way, and it continues to be.
I feel like you're selling Mr. Terrific short.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I love Michael Holt. I love every comic with him.
Like he might be the number one. It's probably one of those three for sure. I don't know. I guess Will Magnus is probably No.
Stop
Will Magnus rules, man.
Stop
make the Metal
it.
Man.
Stop.
What's wrong with Will Magnus?
You could make the Metal Man. Come on.
Listen, if I could make the Metal Man, I would be busy doing other things besides this podcast. Like I would agree, though. Like selling gold. I would be like, ha, sorry, buddy. Let me point something out too that I think about every time I read this comic book. Unlike everybody else in the Super 7, Hal Jordan is part of a greater thing. What happened to the rest of Sector 2814 while he decided not to be Green Lantern? Yeah. We can assume the Green Lantern Corps is still around because Emerald Twilight doesn't happen. We can assume that, his ring still works, so the power battery on O is still going. Did they just grant him, administrative leave? What happened to the rest of Sector 2814? Is John Stewart and Guy Gardner out there taking care of it? It's just an interesting question. I'm not saying it's not a plot hole. It's just an interesting question.
No, but I actually that's a very good point. I actually think I have an answer for that because if you think it through, the origin of the rivalry between Hal Jordan and Sinestro is, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, is Hal goes to Korrigar, where Sinestro is from, and he sees that it's basically a fascist I'll say utopia, but it's not really.
It's a lot like Latveria, but
Exactly. No one goes to bed hungry as long as they do exactly what they're told and they don't speak out and they don't even think the wrong way. Fine, great, good.
Right.
But I think it's this same thing where it's like we are the guardians of the universe, but we are absolutely not omnipotent. And a sector could be a planet, could be a system, could be a galaxy. It all depends on the concentration of intelligent life. And I think in most cases, the Guardians don't know what the heck is going on, So Sinestro was able to take over his sector, make it run like a Swiss watch. And what do the Guardians say? They say, you're really good at that. You should teach everyone else. Listen, we got this guy from this planet. They don't even have interstellar travel. They're savages, but the ring chose him. You need to take him under your wing. Your friend was his mentor, whatever. Play around with it. So I love the idea that one of the Guardians is like, hey, we haven't heard from 2814 in 10 years. And they're like, oh, that's weird. Oh, he was the savage, right? Don't worry. He's probably gonna die any day. They got a lifespan of like 3 weeks. So don't worry about it. The ring will find someone else, maybe a Martian. I hear one of them still around. We'll get back on track. Don't worry about it. We got more hate crimes to commit. I think there's a sixth inversion we can get to over with the Red Lanterns. So,
well,
the Guardians are fascists. That's all I'm saying, people. No one elected them. Guardians are fascists. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, there's an argument there. I think, though, that would track with me normally if, like, we assume everything in the DC universe went about this way until this Horde showed up. Hal Jordan was the greatest Green Lantern of them all. They would have to wonder what happened to it. They would have to be like, where's this guy who we thought was a savage, but who rose to great heights? But again, like I said, it's not necessarily a plot hole. For all we know, Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner are taking care of it. And they're like, hey, leave Hal alone for a while. He's busy. Right. For all we know, like you said, they don't care. They're just like, well, I guess he's dead. We'll get the new one soon. And they lose track of time because they're, quasi-omnipotent and, quasi-immortal. So, and again, I don't want somebody to listen to this and be like, oh, that is a plot hole. It's not. It's just a question. No, it doesn't have to be addressed here.
Good question.
I mean, I always get in fights with people about that because everyone's like, well, this is a plot hole. This is a plot hole. It's like, no, it's not. You have a finite number of pages and you have to tell the best possible story. And if you assume that everyone who's going to read this has also, like the three of us, read most of the other comics that are coming out, then that's a very small population. You have to, if this was someone's first comic, this would be great, I think, because you see all these heroes at their best, at their lowest, but also at their best. And then you'd be like, oh, man, I kind of want to see what else is going on. So I thought it was a great Hal story. I actually would. We were talking before about how Captain Marvel shows up and disappears. If anyone wants to revisit this time period and show us what Jon Stewart was up to, I can only imagine because that guy's great.
I think that people have lost track, too, because you hear a lot about plot holes. But in this case, I feel like what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to fill in your blanks. If there's part of this story, like what happened to the Martian Manhunter, you just make it up. That they leave that part open to you. And to me, that's always been part of the beauty of comic books in a way that like novels and movies don't necessarily get across sometimes. Because they'll fill in all the blanks, partly for necessity. You don't want to have any dead space in either of those mediums. In comic books, they can just allude to something that might have happened, and then you're supposed to be 12 years old again, up an hour past your fucking bedtime, drinking Sunny Delight and reading this and thinking about all the things it could possibly have, all the things that like Robin could possibly be doing here.
Yeah. The late, great Stan Lee said it best. You have a problem with something we put out? You tell us how you would fix it. And if it's good, I'll send you an empty envelope. It'll change your life, kid. I will give you a no prize for doing my work for me. And how many of those people who mailed in letters to Stan the Man and got a no prize work in comics today? I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. One of the best things about the modern superhero story is that it requires participation and it begs you to have an imagination. And they're not plot holes because you're limited in the amount of space and you're limited by the great art. They're questions, and the questions you ask yourself. And if you can come up with a great idea and it drives you to write that story down, then it's canon somewhere, man. They're all imaginary stories. Alan Moore said that. Whether or not they get written down and whether or not they get published, they still exist somewhere.
I wanted to real quick just toss this out here because we were talking about the art. And I mean, I know you probably looked at it there, Darry, doing some research, trying to figure out. I go to Mike's Amazing World of Comics. I click on Brock Elhore's name. 3 comics show up. There's 4 entries, but 3 comics. Superman, Adventures of Superman, Annual 6, which we're looking at. Prototype number 13 and Mantra number 20. That's it.
Oh, the Ultraverse. Okay.
Yeah, all within, we're talking June of 94, which is this comic. And then the last comic he does, Mantra number 20, is April of 95. And that's it. So, this is competent art. This is not horrible. I don't know why, I don't understand why he stopped. Maybe he just went in some other field or whatever. But yeah, you're right. There isn't hardly anything out there on him.
Well, I mean, the industry was constricting. And it was constricting exponentially at the time. And maybe there just wasn't work for him. What's the work he does at DC? It's an annual. Yeah, which is generally stuff you got to get some extra people in. I don't know. Maybe he got a better deal. Maybe he was just helping out a friend. Maybe he never really did comic book, really wanted to be in comic books, because the fraternity between artists is really incredible when you start to dive into the history of comic books and, the relationships they had. Like every time I'm reading, about this stuff I'm reading about this stuff from Charlton now, and I was reading about this stuff from the 70s. Walt Simonson and Bernie Wrightson and 3 other people would get together and hammer out a comic in 2 days because Jeff Jones was behind. So for all we know, this is just a buddy. I couldn't find anything on him either. So I hope something tragic didn't happen to him. I hope that's not what's going on here. But yeah, I didn't find anything. But this was more than competent work. I think it was really good. It really fit the tone of the story. The most important
when you
thing.
Look at those panels, man. I mean, Darry just went on about how many of those panels spoke to him. And it's
me too.
Yeah, right.
Now there's something else to the art that makes it stick out for me. There's a design element too. This does not seem like it's someone's first comic. It may be. Again, I don't know anything about the artist, but it certainly doesn't feel that way. Not only is there a science fiction element with the Horde, and there's this dystopian, paramilitary stuff going on, but he also draws a beautiful Lana. Every one of the backgrounds is filled in. Everything is I don't want to say well lit because it's not a movie, but clearly he thought about the lighting and all these frames. The great scene we were talking about before, This Is a Job for Superman, takes place in a prison basement, and everything is in deep, dark shadows. There's none of that sunlight that fuels the Man of Tomorrow until the last panel. And it comes basically from when he's breaking the fourth wall. It's I'm not an art guy. I know what looks good to me, but I couldn't tell you why. And I certainly couldn't draw anything more complicated than a stick figure. But this is great. And this just doesn't feel like someone's first book. It might be. And if so, they may have just realized that they were too good for this field. Because to Dean's point, there's not always a monthly book with a steady income waiting for you. And even then, we've seen it with the greats. This industry isn't kind to you, even if you are really, really good at your craft. It burns people out, and it doesn't always have a reward at the end. So maybe they were just hey, that's fun. I'm going to go do something else. And, under some pseudonym, they've done great work. But yeah, I also hope it wasn't a tragedy, because I've read these books many, many times, and I would buy more work from them today.
It's funny that Lana Lang, when she shows up, she's wearing the super clean, hottest designer clothing you can imagine in this war-torn, city. It's funny. It's an interesting juxtaposition. I really think that that's another testament to how good the artist here is, because it doesn't seem out of place at all somehow, but it possibly could have. It could have not been pulled off as well as it was, but you just sort of accept it. Here's the hot counselor. Yeah,
perks of being the counselor.
I did want to mention Lana, because I love her use here. She's one of those characters that was created for a specific purpose, which was, hey, we want to do a Superboy story. It's a prequel, so he can't have met Lois. What do you got? Well, we're going to create Lana Lang. But she comes back in the present, and, she doesn't have a lot to do unless she's fighting for Superman's affections, which are fine. But here, I love the idea that she gets to be the representative of the remaining humanity, that she's been able to parlay the fact that she's very comfortable around superhumans into some level of political power, I guess, and she obviously uses it to help the Friends, but at the same time, she's still competing with Lois, because the entire point of this issue is that Superman only has his great moment and only agrees to come back and only goes away in the first place because of Lois. Lois is tragically killed, and the mere whisper that she might be alive allows the Man of Tomorrow to come out of hiding, as it were. And I'm simplifying the story somewhat, but those are the big beats, and I think Lana's the perfect foil for that, because there's a real vested interest in Superman and thus Superboy and everything else. The other thing I want to talk about is the cover. The cover to Adventures of Superman #6 is Mike Mignola, who we mentioned before as being the artist on arguably the first modern Elseworlds, Gotham by Gaslight. He was also the cover artist on an issue we reviewed in our Law, the Charlton Heroes episode. And this was made the same year. So, he was definitely doing some great DC work back then. I love this cover because not only does it lay out the characters in their new post-apocalyptic design, but in typical Mignola fashion, first of all, you don't see a foot, which I love. I feel like that's a trope. I think it was Rob Liefeld.
Mignola, you can't draw feet!
There you go. There you go.
It's funny how he never gets criticized for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care either fucking way whether Liefeld or Mignola does, but yeah, it's funny how certain things are only for certain people.
I can't draw a foot, but I know I like Mike Mignola, and I know that when I see his name on a book, I buy it. This cover, I think, is great. I really do. The way the Batman is drawn, the way Metalex is shaded in the background, so you don't necessarily give anything away. The characters look more roast, but still, ready for action. It's one of these things that you'd see on the later Hellboy comics, with kind of the crowd shots of, Hellboy being surrounded by both his allies and just these terrible things, and the character always being like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm tired. I don't necessarily want to, but I'm going to. And I love that here, because so many comics have Superman especially just ready for action and going and fresh-faced, and here it's like, no, this guy's been through something, and I want to know what it is, and I want to know why he's still here. And again, all the design work, I love their post-apocalyptic costumes. I love that they all have leather jackets. The Flash has robot legs. Batman's got this little, I don't know if it's a cybernetic or just a technological thing on his mask. Like, it's so 90s. The whole thing looks like it was designed by James Cameron, and I love it. I have such nostalgia for that aesthetic. The Batman. We have not mentioned the Batman enough for this first issue. So not only does he pull a Rorschach and is like, I'm not retiring, I'm going to continue to fight you, and I dare you to catch me. And for 10 years, no alien is not only not able to catch him, but even though they know it's him, they don't kill any humans in reprisal because they can't prove it. And again, It's this whole thing of like, you have to be afraid of us. And if we can't prove it's the Batman and we're just going to kill you for no reason, then, we're going to be the bad guys, and you're not necessarily going to turn a supervillain in. That's the most Batman thing I've ever read in a comic.
How can they not find him? Like, he's driving this goddamn Batmobile that's like the size of the state of Oklahoma.
It's one of those.
Like, how can you not find him?
The other thing I love, and again, we were talking about the no feet. Batman's costume is mostly pouches by volume. It's not just his utility belt, his famous utility belt. He's got them wrapped around his arm. He's got them wrapped around like bandoliers. They're everywhere. And I guess, in the post-apocalypse where presumably you don't have Alfred, the rest of the Bat family or whatnot, you need more stuff. But I just loved it, because it's just, you wouldn't design something that way now. But in 1994, it's like, well, what does Batman need after 10 years of being on his own? He needs more pouches. He absolutely does. And I am not making
Bat now.
Yeah, exactly. I am not making fun of that. I love it. I wanted to point it out because, again, it couldn't be more 1994 if it tried. So thank you again for that, Mr. Artist.
Great. All right, let's get into second issue here. Boy, oh boy, credits for this one from Mike's Amazing World of Comics. So again, Carl Kiesel still doing the writing. This is Superboy Annual #1, by the way. On sale date, July 5th, 1994. Penciled by Greg Luzniak. And the inkers are multiple names here. We got Jackson Geist. We got Peter Gross, Luke McDonald, Stan Walsh, Andy Parks, Dave Bender, Ray McCarthy, Dan Davis, and Andrew Papoy, all getting credits for inks on this issue. Lettered by Christopher Eliopoulos and colored by Tom McCraw. All right, in our second part of the story, the team is honing their skills and preparing for their upcoming battle with the Horde. Lana tells Superman she can get him Lois, but he has to bring the team to meet her tomorrow night at the remains of the Daily Planet. The team arrives and is immediately surrounded by the Horde. It turns out Lana has double-crossed them, which leads to Wonder Woman getting killed while saving Jimmy Olsen. The leader of the Horde, Krillin, has arrived and seeing the current battle looks to kill all of the citizens of Metropolis. I think he says like every woman, man, woman, and child are dying. Just be ready. Drops this large shield over the city. And the hero's like, okay, we got to get out of here. And they head to underground. They regroup underground. Thinking quickly, Batman devises a plan to get him and Superboy onto the mothership. Albeit Superboy did not know that this was going to be happening, but he got there anyway. Surrounded by the Horde, Batman detonates a large bomb, sacrificing himself and also bringing the ship crashing into the city. The Resistance fighters rally to attack the Horde at this point. Wally West sacrifices himself to save Green Lantern, while Metal X is overcome by the Horde. During all of this, Superman and Superboy head to find Lois. The pair, however, find Krillin and Lana instead, learning that Lois did indeed die 10 years ago, and this was a trick by Lana as she felt scorned by Clark. Krillin uses the kryptonite from Metal X's bodies to subdue Superman and has the upper hand in a battle with Superboy when Metal X, still with enough power to rise, and he impales Krillin from behind, killing him. Finding Superman has died, Superboy puts on Superman's outfit and carries Krillin's body outside, showing the Horde he is dead. This further inspires the Resistance, turning the tide of battle. 1 month later, things appear to have gone a lot better for humanity. Green Lantern summons Superboy and Metal X to tell him he plans on looking for more metas out there, while the other two continue to find the rest of the remaining Horde and eliminate them. That's how we end our story. Now, I did not put every fantastic beat into that story, just the big ones, because there is a lot of stuff that's happening in the second part. But I can't do that justice in a synopsis, because everything that happened in this issue is just, again, we didn't drop at all. This story did not go down. It just went up from issue 1 or part 1 to part 2.
Man, it's fantastic. Now that I know that it's based on a movie, there's just, in my life, there's nothing spectacular here. There's not really much innovation. There's not really any new ideas, but everything that's done is just done perfectly. And so the second issue hits all the beats. You're pretty much from the start of it, you kind of know how most things are going to go. I got to say, I really like Lana Lang. And personally, I'm like, you should pick her and not Lois. I like her better. That's a hot take. It's just how I feel about it. I don't know why. I like the underdog. I love her, but listen, if you want to bone Superman, tell him. What are you waiting for?
Dude.
Honestly, be like, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I lied. Lois, she's dead. But we had to get you going, or we were going to die. And also, I love you. I want to, be Mrs. Superman. We can do this together, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I don't know what would have happened. Although, honestly, I think you probably would have gone for on it. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I can't say for sure. I didn't say, but I can see there are lots of Elseworlds imaginary stories where he winds up with Lana, a few not dissimilarly, where Lana pulled some, duplicity, not became a counselor and a quisling for an alien horde, but certainly some duplicity to get him. So I think it's the only thing that really doesn't work. It's hard for me to see Lana Lang doing that. But obviously it's Elseworlds, so things happen. But if you go to another imaginary story, whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, she becomes, she gets superpowers for a little bit because she's going to help Superman. And she overhears Superman say that she's great, but he's always going to love Lois. And she is devastated, but she's like, I'm still going to go help him. Yeah, I'm going to show him who really loved him. I just don't see what she knows about Superman and what she knows about herself. There's no way this ends well for her. Oh, hey, listen, I sacrificed the rest of your fucking post-apocalyptic Justice League, but you and me, let's hook up. I just don't think that that just doesn't seem like something she would think of. It's an Elseworlds though, so that's a very minor minor quibble there.
What you said is what is written in my note here practically. As I put, someone needs to explain Lana Lang's turn. Like it's been a ruse since the beginning to flush them all out. It seems like that's what it was, the intention. But because Clark wasn't interested in her, like she could have flip-flopped at any point. Like if he would have just been like, hey, I'm kind of, I'm interested. She would have been like, okay, I'm going to help you guys beat the Horde. But he's trying to rescue Lois Lane because he wants to try and rescue somebody that he loved, that he thought was dead, from the clutches of the Horde. And she's upset because Clark wasn't like, screw Lois, give me some sugar.
The way I looked at it, you're right, this isn't spelled out in the text, but the way I looked at it is Lana is doing pretty well for herself. And I don't know how you go from where she was in the story before the Horde invades to being, the designated human representative to said Horde. Like, there is a lot that must have happened in that decade. And I imagine most of it was terrible. The fact that Lana gets to the point where Superman finally comes back, and it's because of a lock of hair that she's cloned or whatever. Like this really almost thin plot. And the fact that that breaks her and says, oh man, you were never going to love me. You were never going to save me from this. All this stuff that I sacrificed, the miserable, awful things I must have agreed to placate our overlords, maybe wasn't worth it. And for her to break like that, I just thought, we don't know what she's really been through. And I kind of wrote off a lot of it to that. But you're right. No one ever really comes in and says something along the lines of, oh man, we broke you 5 years ago, and ever since then you've just been our you've been playing along. Up until the moment it happens, the reader really is supposed to believe that she's supporting the resistance movement. So maybe it's not 100% fleshed out, but I do buy it because again, it's a long-standing thing, the Lana Lois Superman love triangle. But I also think if there had been a few more pages just spent on going over what she had to endure to survive and flourish during those 10 years, I'm sure it was awful. I'm sure it was as bad, if not worse, than anything one of the main characters had to go through.
I'll give you that. Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. That's a very good point.
That makes a certain degree of sense, and obviously people do illogical things under duress, but it's still just like, how do you think this is going to work out well for you? Like this, they're like, what's your, it's become one of my favorite things to ask people. I'm like, okay, in a perfect world, what result do you want from this play? Like, what do you think you're going to get? And it seems off, but it's fine. Again, it's
her answer would be Superman smooches.
right. Superman just gives me a big wet one and then punches the aliens and the Andromeda Galaxy. We haven't spent enough time talking about Wonder Woman, really, and she is like magnificent. She comes in with like all these weapons, like she's got a big lance and her lasso and a shield. It's really cool when she shows up, and it's sad that she dies, but like one of the things that I really like about when she dies is like, she says she showed up because a Greek oracle told her what was going to happen, and like, but it was still her choice. Like, so she knew that she was going to die to save humanity. And like, she's telling like, oh, you shouldn't have come. She's like, no, I knew this was going to happen. That's fine. It's the only way you'd find Superboy and Green Lantern. Like, if I wasn't, and if you don't have them, it all doesn't work out. It really shows the testament to how much a character that should absolutely detest the world outside of Paradise Island, how much she still loves it and what she's willing to do, not just for the world, but for like her friends. You can tell. It's really funny how like, in some universes, Wonder Woman and Superman are, a romantic item like in Kingdom Come. And, there's no problem with that. Here, they're obviously just great friends. And there's also no problem with that. They're one of the few, like, couple isn't the right word for it. I guess pairings that really could work either way. Like there's, you can ship them if you want. If you don't, that's fine. But like either way, the love and respect that they have for each other always comes through. And it really, really, really shines through here. I alluded to earlier the moment where Wally West saves Green Lantern, who is talking mad trash as he destroys these guys, telling them, the only way he's like, you better run. The only way you can get to me is if you're yellow. One of them finds a yellow. It's the only yellow thing in like the entire comic book besides the Kid Flash costume. And Kid Flash saves him. It's like I tear up thinking about it. He's like, he ran one last time. That was it. That's what he had in him.
Oh man,
and that's what it took to save the day. And Green Lantern, without him, they don't win the day. Like, he is the last hero that is actually standing on the front lines.
What works so well in this comic at a few different spots is the build up to whether this person is going to be able to overcome the thing that has kept them down for so long. And you don't know if it's going to happen. That's what makes it good, because as you're looking through the panels, the whole setup is like Wally West is, he's been so traumatized. He's scared to death, of going back out into battle and failing somebody because he can't run as fast as he can. You see the spear. I'm looking at the panels right now. His face is just horrified as he sees this spear coming right to the back.
You see it in slow motion. Everything happens so much. He can't run, but he hasn't lost his super speed, which would include his super awareness.
You don't know if Wally's going to be able to pull this off, because he has to get past himself in order to do this. And it is just tremendous when it happens. It's fantastic to watch him make this move. And finally he runs. There's other moments throughout the book where you're like, okay, is this person going to be able to do this? Are we hanging on? We're hanging on by a thread. And then that next panel, it comes up and it shows us they finally overcame it. And that's what makes you go, yes.
Great script too, because you have Green Lantern who's like, yeah, Wally, you're still the fastest man alive. He's like, not for much longer, and like he knew he was gonna die. I really like the Green Lantern, and I don't know how it worked in the Seven Samurai. I assume if it's a pastiche, it's similar. This guy had to get his redemption. Well, it only works if he lives to this battle. Like he had, like when you get to the end and he's the really the only hero who was on the front lines the whole time. Superman and Superboy like go off on their own things. And he's to the end of the day, by being there on the front lines with those guys, he realizes that in some ways every life he saves is worth like 2 or 3 of the people they lost in Coast City. That like he is utterly redeemed himself. And of course, the end where they kind of do they play on the Lex Luthor Superman thing. Metalex is like, hey, I'm going to be in charge of Metropolis, and the new Superman is like, well, we'll see. And then Green Lantern's like, don't worry, Lex, you're going to get what's coming to you. Like they all kind of know at some point that the Metropolis free zone won't be big enough for the two of these folks. But for now, there's nothing to be in charge of. For now, there's only rebuilding to do. So you have to rebuild, and then later on, we'll see who winds up the sheriff of Metropolis in the future. But everything in this in the second part from start to finish is, with the exception of, Lana Lang, who, like I said, that's probably personal for me. I can't be objective about her. It's pretty much perfect. It hits every beat. Every page makes you just want to turn it and go to the next one. Like, it's hard to recommend a comic so highly that, again, doesn't particularly shift any paradigms or do anything new. It's just straightforward. It's a lot like Mariano Rivera. Like, all he threw was the cutter. Everybody knew he was going to throw the cutter. That's all he did. He did that to the Hall of Fame. He didn't have to throw anything else. He didn't have to do anything else. The greatest closer in baseball history. He didn't invent anything. He didn't do anything, that nobody wasn't expecting. This, almost everything as you get about 2/3 of the way through this, you know exactly what's going to happen. And then when it happens, you're just excited to see it. And in many ways, I think that might be the best compliment you can give a story like this.
I'll agree.
Especially in an Elseworlds setting. Like, think about it like where it's like fucking Batman, but he's Frankenstein. It's only going to go one way. You know what I mean? Like, so like here, this is only going to go one way, and it's just great to see it when it gets there.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and throw my notes out here. So I really only have a couple other ones, some things that happened in the second issue. Superboy really has something for Wonder Woman. All throughout the whole both issues, keeps calling her wonderful. And then they're training, and like he lays one on her. He gives her a big old kiss, and boy, does she smack the shit out of him. Which is
deservedly so.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Bit too brash, but brutal enough too. Where I don't know if it happens here in the previous issue. I think it's in this issue where he like takes apart that one horde, and inside is like this grub looking guy.
Yeah, that's great.
And he just like, he's looking at him. He's like, some people may not think about killing you twice or whatever he says. But anyway, regardless, he squishes that thing, which is great.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, obviously for anybody, Wonder Woman would have to be the most attractive lady you've probably ever seen in your life. Now think about this guy who lives in like, what appears to be, Mad Max Fury Road, but with aliens. She's literally a goddess. So of course, how could he not be smitten? How can he not think he has a chance? He's had superpowers in this world. He's been doing his thing for a bit.
The part where Batman takes Superboy up onto the ship. Now, does he have the Azrael gauntlets on? Are you seeing?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
So. I did believe those were the Azrael gauntlets.
Okay, which was pretty cool. That was a nice little nod. I got a couple questions here. I'll ask you guys. The art style of the two books clearly different. We got two different artists. Personally, we're not saying which one's better, but I want to ask you guys, which one do you prefer? I will say that I prefer our second part here. I liked Greg Luzniak's take on these characters. It definitely felt more 90s to me. It's probably because this art style evokes a lot of action. There might even be a little bit of excessive saliva syndrome going in through some of this.
It's like this art gives you rabies.
Some of the characters are drawn like that, but if you pay attention to the facial expressions for most of these characters throughout this book, I think the way that this artist does faces, it's great. Anyway, I'm leaning for Superboy Annual #1. Greg Luzniak's take on this story for which one I prefer. Darry, do you have a preference?
Yeah, I gotta go with Brock. I really do. That first issue to me, like I said, I don't consider myself all that knowledgeable on art, but I really enjoyed that one. I did not think the second one was bad by any stretch of the imagination. And to your point, it does feel more 90s. It feels more like what I would expect from comics of the time. And that's not a knock. That stuff made me fall in love with this medium in the first place. But yeah, I got to go with the first one. I've definitely read it a few more times between the interior art, the Mignola cover, and everything else. I've definitely read that one a few more times. But yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about the Luzniak art. I just prefer the first one.
Okay. What about you, Dean?
For me, I'm going to say I prefer the first one, but I find like the interiors to be fairly equal. But like the cover of the first one is the reason I bought it. I didn't steal it. I bought it.
He bought this one, folks.
I know. I bought them both.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
No, I didn't I wasn't a vagrant this time, just vagabonding my way through the comic book store through Walmart. But I bought the first one because I thought the cover was so cool. I had to make a choice about which of these Elseworlds annuals I was going to get, and that was the choice that I made, and it was the right choice because I think another one was the one where like Superman is Tarzan. That one's not great. It's not terrible, but like this was certainly the one to get. If I had narrowed it down to those two.
Okay, let's see your favorite moments. I don't want to take somebody, but I want to do it, probably. My favorite moment of this second book absolutely has to be Wally West Flash saving Green Lantern. Am I taking yours, Dean, or do you have a different one?
No, I mean, it's, I was eating a bag of Tostitos earlier, and they were all fucking delicious. It's like you're trying to ask me which of those Tostitos was my favorite. I ate a third of this goddamn bag, like, Calorie City.
One of my favorite Facebook statuses that you put was, "I've ate too many Fritos, y'all."
I have done
that was all it said. And I was like, that is just the greatest status I've ever read.
I'm truly the American poet of our time. And anybody who thinks otherwise just needs to listen to this or read my Facebook. There's a lot of great stuff. Like, hey, here's an article about how we're all going to die in 22 years from global warming. Also, how about this picture of Peacemaker? But I think it's really hard to pick a favorite moment, but you know what? I'm going to go with the one that I really think, and this sounds very like lordy and like patronizing, but the one you should pick is the last page. The one you should pick is where, hey, things are going back the other way. Here's Superman. We're back. It's, they won the day, and there's going to be a new Superman and a new legacy and a new era. And I think that like all of the tragic moments are great and they're very cathartic. I think it's important for me personally to remember that, like, in this case, the journey is something to be remembered, but not necessarily celebrated. To me, I personally want to celebrate the end, the overcoming. And that may be because of my personal turmoils that I've discussed here, what have you. But for me, that's the moment. And I close the book. And, like I said, if I haven't read it in a month, that's the last time I'll tear up.
My favorite moment in the issue is a little bit before the end. It's the scene where it says, your leader is dead, which is...
yeah, that's a great one. Kind of the same sentiment as my favorite.
The reason I like this scene so much is when you look on the page, you see a man in a Superman costume and you're meant to believe it's Superman. It's not. It's Superboy. And they've all realized in the final moment that it's not enough to just defeat the leader and overthrow these people. They have to reinstill faith in the populace, or else this cycle's going to continue. And you're not going to get a return to what you have at the end. You're not going to get Superman in a costume being just something that happens that we're all used to. You have to get back to that. And I love this moment because not only does it give, I'm just going to call him Connor Kent. I know that's not his name here, but give him that moment that he doesn't necessarily have, especially now in modern continuity. The character of John Kent is pretty much the new Superman. He understands the weight of wearing that costume, and it's why he put that symbol on in the first place. He didn't do it arbitrarily. He did it because he wanted to evoke something very specific in the people around him, the people he was trying to save, and here he accomplishes that. And I think that's beautiful. I always like to say that some of my favorite Superman stories are the ones where he's fictional. And what I mean by that is you can often tell a really good Superman story using people who were inspired by him. Famously in the anime Dragon Ball, when the character goes from Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z, he becomes an alien, and he fights Vegeta, who is very similar to General Zod. That was all inspired by the writer-artist, seeing all the Superman movies and loving those. The movie The Iron Giant uses a fictional version of Superman. Arguably, Captain Marvel himself was inspired by Billy reading a Superman comic, though I don't know if that's actually canon or something I made up. But here, it's perfect, because you see Superboy take the costume, go outside and say, I've defeated the leader. Now you don't have to be afraid anymore. So when you see this Superman symbol, which I've dedicated my life to, you can feel better about things because, we're all going to be in this together, and I'm going to help you to the best of my ability, which are great. So that is my favorite moment in this comic, because it's not just a triumph, the physical triumph. It's an emotional, it's a psychological one as well. And you can see it. I mean, it's the only time Green Lantern smiles in 2 issues. Even the other humans they look up. The aliens are horrified because they know they've lost. They know,
right.
I'm sure even when they were flying here, they were being told, listen, this world we might lose this one, and then they win, and they're all like, oh, this is great. These guys weren't so bad. And then a decade later, Superman does what Superman does, which is he wins and he frees everyone, even if it's someone else acting as Superman. I found that moment to be incredibly powerful, and I love it. As far as final thoughts, there's so much in this comic. I mentioned Dragon Ball, and the villain is called Krillin, who is the main character of Dragon Ball, Goku's friend in the comics. I love that. I don't know if that was intentional. 94 is kind of early for Dragon Ball to be famous in this country, but this guy clearly saw the same
I don't know.
thing.
We had that shit-ass Nintendo game.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not going to speak for Carl Kiesel, but I really appreciated that, whether or not it was a reference. Krillin famously being a good guy, but he did start out as an antagonist, so who knows what. Going back to this being based off the movie, the movie is not a great feel-good story. Of the 7 samurai, 4 of them are killed, and it's mostly like petty things. Like I imagine it would be in a real war. Not everyone gets to die killing the head of the enemy army, but most of the right.
It's like the Saving Private Ryan moment. Those guys get off the fucking march and they just shot in the head. That's it.
Yeah. The movie, the whole point of the movie is, thematically speaking, it's like, well, why are the bandits, which are what the Horde is called in the movie, why are they attacking? Well, because they're desperate. They need to eat, and these villagers have crops. They don't have anything else. They can't hire anyone other than 7 people who are down on their luck and who will eat for just a good night meal and a place to sleep. But also everyone's desperate. Samurai are supposed to be high-ranking political people, and at this point in time, they're not. The wealth is being concentrated in a few people. No one's being helped, and the people at the lowest are, on their own. So they have to resort to this. So it's this whole thing about how everyone driven to desperation turns on each other. It's not a a feel-good story. And for the most part, you get that here. But because it's a superhero comic, in the end, instead of it just being, well, we tried our best and our friends died and the villagers get to go on and maybe one day we'll die in a glorious battle, but most likely not. Here, it's the reverse. Here, it's like Superman's back. Green Lantern is back. Even Luthor is back. We're going to fall back into the same shenanigans, but we made it. We made it through. We made it through that awful nonsense of 10 years. So again, I really like that the story, as much as it is adapted for these comics, it's still a superhero story, and I really appreciate it about that. You guys mentioned Wonder Woman early, and yeah, I want to echo that. I agree with all of that. This is a great Wonder Woman story. I mean, the whole revelation that she knew she was going to die in battle, but doesn't hesitate. I mean, if you imagine, you got to be her on Themyscira, and this oracle is telling you, yeah, you're going to die in glorious battle, and we're going to win. But also, this weird teenage kid in a headband is going to try to make out with you a lot. I don't know how you feel about that. So, she makes the most sacrifice of dealing with everything. But
well, she can handle it because she's like, but I die really quick after that starts, right? But yeah, it's not a long time. Okay, cool. Fine. Well, as long as I get to the dying part fast.
Wonder Woman also shows up to play. Like I always tell people that my favorite Wonder Woman stories are kind of where she's in charge. I mean, listen, she was raised by the gods, the earliest gods of Western civilization. She knows all the great heroes. She knows all the legends. Like, there's no reason she's not the greatest warrior to ever exist. So when she shows up here and she's like, oh man, alien bandits, and I got to help put the team back together and throw them away. Yeah, that's why I became Wonder Woman in the first place. So I just thought she was used incredibly well. And you guys mentioned her weapons. I love that she has kind of a holy cosmic armory, because it's one of those things that separates her from Superman and Martian Manhunter and even Superboy. It's like she's not just strong, she's good with a variety of weapons. Like anything that you think to throw at her, she's going to have a response to. And I just,
that's one of the other things that connects her to Aquaman, because Aquaman is good with like underwater weapons and stuff. Between that and like their royal connection, like their characters are very similar. I've always felt like really understood each other in a way that characters, kind of the way Black Panther and Namor understand, and even Doom, they all understand each other because heavy is the head that wears the crown or what have you. But I want to tell you this real quick. Y'all want to hear the dumbest thing about Wonder Woman that I've ever heard?
Oh boy,
please.
Yeah, sure.
So it was right when they were showing what Wonder Woman was going to look like in BBS. Okay. And this guy showed her with like the sword and the shield. And this guy's like, Wonder Woman doesn't use a sword. This is like a Facebook conversation. And everybody's like, she uses a sword a lot. And they start showing you all these pictures of Wonder Woman using a sword. He's like, yeah, but back in the 90s when Bill Loebs was doing it, that kind of thing, and Brian Ball and cover, she didn't use a sword. Then all of a sudden, a cavalcade of pictures of this era of her using the sword. Then he's like, sure. But the George Perez stuff, she didn't use a sword during that kind of stuff. That's not part of the character. All of a sudden, cavalcade of like this fucking Wonder Woman using a sword. He's like, okay, whatever, but like, listen, when the character was originally created the way intended, she's a person of peace, no sword. Fucking 55 pictures of Golden Age Wonder Woman with a sword. I'm pretty sure this guy's dead now. Just died, like on the spot, right?
Been proven wrong enough.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but while we were talking about Wonder Woman, Darry, I knew you'd want to hear that story. That is the funniest Wonder Woman story I've ever heard. I've never seen somebody get owned on the internet so hard. And like, this is one of, how like sometimes when somebody's getting owned or something, somebody's like, well, they kind of meant this. Everybody's like, wow, you are terrible. And like to imagine like quadrupling down, like quintupling down on this, like,
right, dude.
Take
like stop while you're ahead, man. Gosh,
I gotta imagine this guy knew exactly what he was doing, because you're sitting there and you're like, I want to expose a lot of people who maybe haven't read a lot of Wonder Woman comics to this stuff. I'm gonna make these people do my work for me. I'm just saying, I've done that before. I've picked the other side of an argument just to see how much the other side knew. Sounds like this guy knew what he was doing.
This guy was one of those MRA guys.
All right. Maybe not. I was trying to play devil's advocate.
I think he also critiqued the outfit for looking too masculine, like that kind of thing,
Yeah.
Also, it was too masculine, but Gal Gadot also didn't have arms big enough to hold a sword.
Oh yeah, right, of course.
So no, I know what you're talking about, and that good-natured trolling, and then you're like, haha, blah blah. This guy was not doing it, but he also was not doing anything other than shrinking it into a corn cob.
Oh, that's great.
The only other thing I wanted to mention is I said before when asked that I preferred the art in the first one over the second one. Again, not a knock to the art in the second one, and particularly I wanted to point out that this has one of my favorite. I don't know if it's a trope, but certainly something you saw more often back then. This has a double page vertical spread, which I love.
Yeah.
When Superboy is fighting Wonder Woman in this kind of like training montage, at first I wasn't sure what was going on, and then I had to rejigger the screen a little bit, and it's one of those where you have to turn the comic so that it's a double page spread, but it's basically one large double-sized panel, and I appreciate the heck out of those. Those took me back. I don't believe they're still in vogue, but I really appreciated seeing one here.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Let's bring them back.
Hey, listen, man, I got a Wildcats comic coming out right now, so someone somewhere's got 90 nostalgia. In fact, I think DC is right now doing a 90s throwback celebration with variant covers from the 90s. So
how about that? I should see what they're doing and not buy any because variant covers are expensive. I don't really buy very many of those.
I saw a house ad for it, and I got very excited because at first I thought, wait a second, did I pick the wrong issue out of the pile? And it's like, nope, it's 2022, and you were doing a lenticular holofoil cover.
I did see that, yeah. Like of all the gimmicks to like bring back, that's not a good one. Like just slap a fucking hologram on there, or do like those chromium covers, like Exo Man-O-War #0. Like that shit was slick. But like that Robin, what was it, the third Robin miniseries where you pulled like Cry of the Huntress, and you pulled the lenticular up and down. It was just
I don't know if it's actually lenticular, but I think if we look back at previous nostalgia waves, I don't think it's the it's the best stuff that gets brought back later on. Oh,
holy shit! Yeah,
there it is right here. I hasn't moved since I brought it out last time.
Did you guys plan that? That's insane.
No.
You guys, you've mentioned this series before. I've had it sitting right here, and I grabbed it last time. But yeah, you bring it up. You bring it up. There it is. I haven't read it yet. Chuck Dixon, right?
Yeah,
yep,
yeah.
Chuck
I mean,
Dixon.
he's really good at writing Batman characters in the Punisher.
So, go ahead, Darry. Did you have something else?
No. I think I babbled on quite enough, but on the off chance that Carl Kiesel actually listens to this, I just want to say thank you because I love these comics and I love that movie, and these are a delight. And if there's ever a one-shot that comes out that has them both, maybe a little update on the coloring, I'm going to be buying a lot and handing them out to people because everyone should read this. Well said.
Greg Luzniak, by the way, speaking of excessive saliva syndrome, back in December of '95, the man penciled Rune versus Venom. What do you think of that?
How about that?
How
that
about
was a $3.95 comic book. Can you imagine? Highway fucking robbery. $3.95 for that. Ooh. That would be, this was like what, like $8 now?
Probably.
Can you imagine paying $8 for Rune versus Venom with what was in it? Man, they got us. They got us. I'm sure it's fine.
So, Dean, you said it yourself. This was a good comic. I mean, any last thoughts here before we move into plugs?
It's important to note that that Lana does come all the way around. Like it's apparently her idea to make Superboy into Superman. And I also want to just touch back on, the image when Superboy, who is now Superman, brings Krillion's body up. And I think the Superman logo, Superman character rather, is like one of the few characters who's like almost the icon means more than the character. There may be a few others, like you could kind of say that maybe for like Captain America, Possibly the Punisher. You know, there are a few other guys like that, but none nearly as big as Superman, where like you see that image can inspire, and it's just, if somebody else had done the same thing, you know, I mean, in my perfect world, Captain Marvel could have, but it probably wouldn't have worked. But like, say, Martian Manhunter or Captain Comet, who are very similar to Superman in power, if they had done it, it won't work without that shield. Like, that's what really got everybody into it, because that icon has so much power. And I really think that one of the neatest subtexts of this comic is showing you again and again how those icons have that power, and how that can transfer to, you know, inspiring other people and eventually inspiring a great number of people. It's really just, in most ways, it's just a perfect comic book. There's not much else to say about it. You probably find it in $1 or $2 bins now. It's worth, it's worth twice that, 3 times. It's worth, you know, I'd pay $10 for each of these.
Right. I mean,
$10 American.
If you compare this to the quality of some of the other stuff that you're going to find in a $1 bin, seriously, land on this, pick it up. You're right. I went to a flea market and found, I think it was either the first part of this story or the second part of it, because I was trying to get as many Elseworlds from 94 that I could, and I knew there was a few out there that I'd missed, and I'd found one of these issues, and I paid $1 for it. So it's absolutely worth $1. So yeah, man, get your hands on it. Fantastic story. All right, we did it, folks. That was the Super 7. And we are the terrible trio. No, I don't know what we'd call ourselves.
Aren't those the animal mask Batman villains? Is that the
terrible trio? Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't. Dean can assign us, funny animal names. I'm okay with that.
I'm gonna have to go and look these things up and see what that is all about.
You're definitely the wombat.
I am fine with that. I have been called worse.
Let's get into plugs. Dean Compton, Unspoken Decade.
The UnspokenDecade.com is where you're going to find a lot of great articles and some old school podcasts that we did over there too. We're very active on the Facebook page. We're getting more active on Instagram, and Twitter's still around, so I still do stuff there. I'm like 2/3 of the way done, maybe 3/4 of the way done with the 91 Marvel cards, and then I'll move into the 92. So watch out, because, like, listen, if you're a lazy old fuck like me, that's probably going to be very exciting. Get ready for Ghost Rider pictures.
Turn them notifications on, folks.
Right. Dude, hey, smash that bell, hit that like.
Doing it right now.
Real though, we'd love to have you come on by.
Love it. Hey, this was mentioned earlier. We did a conversation. We had a conversation about living assault weapons and Justice League Quarterly number 14, where we took a look at a 90s take on, well, I'll say 90s take, but it's kind of like, you know, a story, 90s story that involved the Charlton Heroes. And we had a lot of fun discussing that. Blue Beetle, Judo Master, The Question. Tune in, folks. That's going to be airing on, or has aired when this airs, but that's going to be in the archives 12th of December, from what I can see, is when that's going to be airing. And then, of course, the Source Material Comics podcast, which is right here on the Source Material feed as well. On the 19th of December, Mark Radulich and I are going to do a comic called Slayer, the Heavy Metal Santa Claus. That's Sleighher. Yeah, baby. Watch out. That was a lot of fun. It basically devolved into a list. That's because we were like, okay, this is a comic. Here it is. Let's go to CBR and look at a list. The 10 times
you make a list, you check it twice.
Perfect. All right. That's going to be it. Thanks to the W2M Network for hosting the podcast. And folks, we hope to talk to you soon. So for Darry, for Dean, I'm Jesse. We'll be talking to you at some point in the future. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com and the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.